only got to attack it once before the Trick Room went up with that return from Kangaskhan, which wasn't nearly powerful enough to stop that Trick Room. So I think he's going to have to be a little bit more careful about how he stops that Trick Room this time. He needs to at least punish the setup harder if he wants to win this game. Unless he thinks he can play inside the Trick Room. Maybe bring different Pokemon next time, play a little slower lineup if he wants to do that. He had all three of his fastest Pokemon there, and it didn't work out too well. So maybe we will see that Lapras or that Rotom to try to stall out the game a little bit more with some of his slower Pokemon. Or he's going to have to try to start with a different lead to interrupt things a little bit, because if he lets the game play out the way it did the first time, Nikolai is definitely going to take this series. He's just not going to be able to play inside of Trick Room with such fast and frail Pokemon.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that that Trick Room is always powerful. It turns out that it's basically a rogue threat at these tournaments. We don't see too many Trick Room teams, but whenever one does show up and it's well constructed like Nikolai's is, it does work.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, too. In past years, Trick Room was a much more popular strategy, especially through Cresselia, which isn't allowed this year because it's only the Kalos Dex Pokemon. Because of that, we've seen a lot less Trick Room. It's much more difficult to get it up with Pokemon who can take advantage of it quickly enough for the 5 turns that it lasts to be effective. We've seen like Rheoniclus, Chandelure, Audino as Trick Room users, which definitely aren't the same class as something like Cresselia. And because of that, we haven't seen much of it. Using Gengar as a Trick Room Pokemon is definitely something that most players wouldn't expect, but it seems to be working very well for him here. And I think players are probably a lot less prepared for that Trick Room because it's been so much less popular here, which is kind of evidence in Mark's team, which is much faster and trying to play well against different threats than what he's against here.
Right, and we do see some different threats on the field this time. We see Mawile and Hydreigon leading for Nikolai up against Aegislash and Staraptor for Mark. So Mark still thinks that he wants to have that Staraptor putting that early pressure on, make that 1-1 trade as soon as possible, but opting to lead with the Aegislash instead of the Kangaskhan, a better counter if that Gengar had made another appearance.
Yeah, in this case too, it's actually a much better lead, I think. Staraptor has some interesting options here. I'm sure it would love to final gambit both of these Pokemon. It's going to have to watch out for walking into a Sucker Punch if it tries, which would vastly reduce the damage of that final gambit, but Maul protecting here, not wanting to risk getting hit by a big damage attack and falling too early.
Yeah, Mawile's not going to worry about that, but final gambit is coming in from Staraptor onto the Hydreigon. Clean trade, 1-for-1. Knocks both Pokemon out, and now we have just a huge offensive threat off of the field for Nikolai. You'll trade your Staraptor for a Hydreigon anytime, and Aegislash also getting to set up his substitute for free.
Yeah, that's a big play by Mark there. I'm a little surprised that Nikolai allowed that to happen. With Hydreigon on the field like that, it's very... the main reason why you use Hydreigon, I guess, at this point in the metagame instead of something like Salamence is because Aegislash is just so popular. You've got that counter to Aegislash out. His opponent was going to realize that, right? So how do you get rid of Hydreigon? Well, you just use that final gambit. It's an easy trade, and he lets it happen here. Still, both sides trading a non-mega Pokemon, so it's not like it's a huge swing, but I think I definitely prefer to be on Mark's side of it, so he's definitely getting a better start in this game. And with Rotom out here, Mawile's really going to have a hard time getting anything done. Yeah, with Heat Rotom on the field against that Mawile, it's definitely, you want to Mega Evolve that Mawile and get some offensive pressure on the board. Garchomp, not a terrible choice here, but the Levitate from Heat Rotom is going to make its most powerful attack useless against it, and Aegislash does not mind getting Rock Slid throughout the entire tournament. Yeah, that's sort of the thing here with Garchomp. It's actually pretty good against both of the opposing Pokemon, so he's got one Pokemon that's bad against both and one Pokemon that's good against both. However, Rock Slide's good against one Pokemon and Earthquake's good against the other, so Garchomp can't really deal with both of them at the same time. So since Maul's already used that Protect there, Rotom and Aegislash are going to have a chance to make some plays here. And it looks like Nikolai wants to make some plays too. Going to go ahead and Mega Evolve his Mawile. So Mega Mawile back on the field. Mark still playing slow, going to continue to protect that Aegislash, hoping that Nikolai is going all out to get that threat off the field. Sucker Punch does fail as it tries to Sucker Punch the Aegislash, but Garchomp going to put up a substitute, and Mawile avoids the Will-O-Wisp from Heat Rotom, but a huge play there. Yeah, well, a nice job there. Aegislash avoids that Sucker Punch, but too bad to see that Will-O-Wisp missing. Great job by Rotom. In theory, I guess strategically a great plan. He gets that Will-O-Wisp and Maw off for free, but it misses, so he doesn't get that burn, and that's definitely going to make this position a lot worse than it could be. We also see a substitute from Garchomp, which is a big deal for two different reasons here. First of all, with that substitute up, it's going to be a lot more difficult to deal with. It doesn't have to worry about that Will-O-Wisp anymore. But also, because it is substitute, it's likely missing another move. Typically, substitute Garchomp runs substitute and protect like most Pokemon in VGC do. So because of that, you're missing one of Earthquake, Dragon Claw, and Rock Slide. Usually it's not Dragon Claw you drop, so Aegislash or Rotom, one of the two, are not going to have to worry about a super effective move here.
Yeah, and as you predicted, that Garchomp is using the Protect, going to stay healthy behind the sub. So is the Heat Rotom. Everyone's protecting. No one wants to make the first move here, except Mega Mawile is going to be able to get that Sucker Punch off onto Aegislash. Is it going to be able to break the sub? Yes. Still in that shield form, but does deal enough damage to break the substitute. Aegislash is going to stance into that blade form in the Flash Cannon, into the Garchomp Protect. So free removal of the substitute for Mawile there.
Yeah, nice job on Nikolai's end there. He started off this game a little bit slow, but a nice job there. He was able to prevent taking any damage that turn. He removes that substitute for free, and that's a big advantage for him. Even though, in theory, it doesn't look like that big a deal just to have the substitute off the field, Aegis has to be a lot more careful now. It's much less likely to try to attack a second turn in a row now because a Sucker Punch would knock it out. So its options a little bit more limited. It's much more likely to use substitute again or to King Shield, which opens up the options on the other side here. Especially if Mawile wants to switch here, but looks like Rotom's going out instead.
Yep, Heat Rotom doesn't want to stick around in favor of Lapras. So Lapras making it on the field this time, going to immediately threaten that Garchomp. But Aegislash is going to go ahead and stance back to shield form. Make sure that it uses King Shield to protect any incoming damage, and hopefully get that Lapras in for free. Sucker Punch, of course, not going to be able to connect to anyone, but Dragon Claw coming out from Garchomp onto Lapras, going to deal some good damage, just under 50% there. Well, it takes a little bit back from its Life Orb.
So that's an awful lot of damage in Lapras there, but we see why with the Life Orb activating. Definitely looks like Mark was expecting Trick Room again. He chose to bring all of his slower Pokemon. I mentioned, in the preview that was one of his options here. So no Trick Room this time, but he is in a better position. Garchomp doesn't like facing down that Lapras, but it's actually still a tough spot for Lapras here. A double target from Mawile and Garchomp would knock it out pretty easily here, so it can't just attack freely. So now at this point, Mark has to try to make a decision here. What does he think his opponent's going to do and try to get a free move with one of his two Pokemon here?
Yeah, it always comes down to these mind games. Mawile Protect to prevent itself from taking any damage from its partner's Earthquake, but the Earthquake is going to connect to both Lapras and Aegislash, and that's Life Orb dealing a ton of damage. Gets Lapras down to red and the Aegislash into the yellow. The Hydro Pump into the Mawile Protect, though, and Aegislash is going to go on the offensive here, going back into its Blade form using Shadow Ball. Also onto the Mawile, the double target into the Protect, and Nikolai takes control of this match.
Yeah, that's a huge play there. Tons of damage from that Garchomp Earthquake, knocking both of these Pokemon into range where a second Earthquake would be able to knock them out. Mawile absorbing both attacks for free, and that's just a trade that Mark could not afford to make at this point. He's really in a desperate situation now. It's not impossible to come back, but he's really going to have to reach for something now. It's a really dominating lead by Nikolai here.
And Nikolai in the control is going to be able to switch out, play a little bit more conservatively, switch out the Mawile for Gengar, whose Levitate will prevent that Earthquake from hurting it. And here comes the Earthquake onto the Aegislash and the Lapras. Is it going to be a two-hit KO? Gets a double KO onto the Lapras and the Aegislash. 2 KOs, 1 attack. Garchomp's got to be pleased, and so does Nikolai.
Yeah, his Garchomp's really doing a fantastic job this game. It's completely taken over the second game. The first game we saw that Trick Room from Gengar really turning the game around, and this time it's an unconventional Garchomp set. You don't quite think of it the same way as being as crazy as Trick Room on such a fast Pokemon, but the combination of Life Orb and Substitute is something that's almost never seen in Garchomp, but really seeing how effective it is here.
Yeah, and we do see another Dragon Claw coming out from that Garchomp, dealing so much damage. More than 50% against that Heat Rotom down to the yellow. Going to be able to heal up a little bit with that Citrus Berry. But of course, Gengar is on the field too. Going to be able to, well, Will-O-Wisp coming out, going to be able to be tanked by that Gengar. Not too worried about that in general. Shadow Ball comes out from Gengar onto the Heat Rotom. Will it be enough to get the KO? Not quite. Does get the special defense drop though. And it's just Heat Rotom. Lower special defense, not many options. And it looks like we're going to have a champion from the United States here.
Looks like it. Not much he can do here for Mark. He's played an admirable series here, but Nikolai's trick just seemed like a little bit too much here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do see a Protect coming out from Heat Rotom, trying to get as much chip damage as possible. Choosing to break the substitute there. A little cheeky. But we will have one more turn left over.
Yeah, perhaps calling the Protect there. Getting a little cheeky here, but I guess when you're winning a match of the World Championship Finals, it's easy to get a little sassy there.
There it is. Garchomp's Dragon Claw is going to be the coup de grace. Heat Rotom goes down. Nikolai Zielinski is your seniors world champion for the Pokemon Video Game Championships. This crowd is going crazy.
Yeah, really impressive victory there. He absolutely dominated that final series.